Gatlin. I'm a Conflict Resolution Education Program Director for the Western Justice Center. And today my partner is...
My name is Arturo Magana, and I'm the Program Coordinator for the Conflict Resolution Education Programs at Western Justice Center. So we'll do a little bit of housekeeping first. Brief disclaimer. So this activity will be audio and video recorded for educational purposes. WJC will hold the copyright to the recording and would like to have the option to continue to use the recording and materials, in addition to creating an archived copy for educational purposes. Please note that your continued attendance in this webinar is an agreement to the recording and therefore affirms WJC the rights to any future use of recordings for educational purposes. So briefly, we'll go over some Zoom etiquette. We ask you to please go ahead and mute your microphones if you haven't done so already. Please write down any questions or notes that you may have or you may want to pose to the group. Please use the chat box to go ahead and pose those questions, and the facilitators will answer the questions periodically throughout the presentation.
Okay. So to begin with, the Western Justice Center's mission is to empower people to strengthen their communities by growing the conflict resolution skills and capacity of youth, educators, schools, and community partners. We asked ourselves, how do we continue to fulfill our mission as an organization to educators, schools, and our community partners during these challenging times? The Western Justice Center decided to leverage its online resource school tools, and with distance learning becoming the new norm, we decided to build upon what we already had by creating a webinar series on how to use school tools. But before we get started, a little bit about the Western Justice Center as an organization. The Western Justice Center, or WJC, you may hear us refer to, was founded in 1987 by a group of visionary judges, lawyers, and civic leaders, and was created to develop creative programs to teach students, teachers, and members of the community ways to resolve conflict peacefully. And just a little bit about ourselves, the team, the program team with the Western Justice Center. My name is Sean Gatlin. I'm the Conflict Resolution Education Program Director. I have worked in conflict resolution education for over 20 years. I have a background in youth development for over 30 years. I've done coordinating in conflict resolution with organizations like the Los Angeles County Bar Association and Centinela Youth Services, doing peer mediation and restorative justice practices. Arturo?
And I am the program coordinator for the Western Justice Conflict Resolution Education Programs team. I have about 13 years working in youth development, 10 of those years at school sites in South LA, most recently with Los Angeles Education Partnership, doing community schools initiatives in elementary school in South LA. Prior to that, I was also administering after-school programs at both Fremont High School and Southgate High School.
So before we take a deeper dive into our online curriculum, we want to begin the conversation where we start with the basics. So the basic is, what is conflict resolution? And actually at this point, before we go a little further, I'd like to get some input from everybody involved. If you could please use the chat box to give us your thoughts on what you think conflict resolution education is. Anyone? Okay, it's teaching communication tools. I think there was another one. Let's
I see it's a middle point where people from either party can come to an agreement.
Mm-hmm. Teaching students, teachers, and administrators how to handle conflict in a good way. Resolving conflict in a peaceful manner, civil manner. Mm-hmm. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I think that conflict resolution is finding a solution to problem solving, allowing people to be heard and feel that their view is understood, and hopefully coming to some solution. Great, you guys. Thank you very much. So if you Google the definition of what conflict resolution education is, you get conflict resolution education, or CRE, you'll hear us refer to, is the explicit instruction of skills and strategies for resolving conflict. And those skills include, but are not limited to, active listening, affective and effective communication, self-awareness, and positive problem solving. So studies show that conflict resolution education supports children's social and emotional learning, and specifically, conflict resolution education strengthens self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. This information is a collaborative for academic, social, and emotional learning, also known as CASEL.
So briefly to go over our response, WJC's response to the COVID-19 is that we are now more than ever committed to our mission statement and core values. By strategically engaging in our core values during this challenging time, WJC's goal is to increase empathy, empower our communities, actively seek out diversity and inclusivity, uphold equitable practices, and make meaningful impact. So going back to what Sean mentioned earlier, we decided to leverage the existing resource that we have and to use it as an opportunity to strengthen conflict resolution skills. So the tools provided today will support maintaining healthy relationships and effectively communicate during the COVID-19 and after. And lastly, we appreciate your participation in this webinar as we continue to connect with our past and current communities and look forward to engaging with more educational partners in the future.
So the purpose for today's webinar is to provide distance learning opportunity for students, parents, educators, and administrators, to provide remote learning for schools that have an active peer mediation program and/or restorative justice practices, and to provide a brief introduction to anyone interested in conflict resolution education. So before we start, a little bit about what School Tools is. It's a free curriculum, conveniently accessible through our website, developed by the Western Justice Center. The conflict resolution lesson plans are used for enriching knowledge and skill base, is useful for resolving conflicts in school and daily personal settings, and is designed for grades 4 through 12, but can be modified for kindergarten through 3rd grade, depending on how you facilitate the lesson plans. So the question I'm sure a lot of you have is, who can use School Tools? Well, everyone can. We encourage our parents, educators, administrators, and even students to engage in the curriculum to strengthen their conflict resolution skills, and even more so now during the current climate. So the lesson plans are designed to be facilitated by a parent, educator, administrator, or even a student. The curriculum is organized into progressive levels, and we'll show you that in just a little bit. The topics are designed to build upon each other, however, the facilitators are welcome to instruct per their needs, and we'll explain a little bit that a little bit more. So to give you a little bit of information about my first experience with school tools, I used it during a summer workshop with the Boys and Girls Club. I was working with an older group of kids, the 9th and 10th graders, they're leaders in training. And basically I use school tools to begin the conversation of conflict resolution. We did a deep dive into themselves through lesson plans like self-awareness and underlining issues and how to approach conflict. And through each lesson, by the end of each lesson, they were able to share new knowledge about their self-awareness, about their personal perspectives in regards to conflict.
And to give a little brief background with my experience with school tools, that we used it in our first year and second year of peer mediation training at the elementary school I was located in. We worked with 4th grade through 6th grade students who became peer mediators. They took time after school, obviously with parent agreement, to stay after school and go through the lessons so that they learned how to navigate conflict, understand conflict, and then be able to mediate conflict from as holistically as possible.
So the benefits of using school tools: for parents, it's a resource for navigating conflict with the family. For an example, arguments between siblings. Educators, it's a resource for navigating conflict in the classroom between student issues, disruptive student interaction. And for administrators, it can be a resource for supporting positive behavioral intervention and supports, known as PBIS, programs like restorative justice circles and peer mediation programs. And for students, it's a resource for them to develop healthy conflict resolution skills, them dealing with rumors, friend-to-friend issues, things like that. And we understand that every school community is unique and different. While school tools provides a comprehensive framework, parents and educational leaders, which also includes students, are encouraged to implement the curriculum as they see fit. For example, give you a little bit of my experience. I've worked with several school campuses in both LAUSD schools and Santa Monica school districts. The school campus's approach to conflict resolution education was very, very different based on the climate of each school environment. However, it can be utilized in every school community. I have seen it from my experience. And being able to define conflict at school, being able to define conflict on a personal level, asking themselves, what does it mean? How do they take an active part in making a change? And in my opinion, being exposed to conflict resolution education begins to transform their outlook and perspective on how to make a change, both internal and external.
And I'll give a little bit of a brief scenario of how school tools helped student peer mediators as well as students that were in conflict to navigate a specific conflict that was taking place in the school. These two students started off their friendship in 4th grade, and after a couple months, they hit some kind of rocky situation. To this day, we're not entirely sure what happened, but ever since then, their friendship wasn't on the same page. So they navigated through peer mediation throughout the months to continue their friendship. They reached a point with the student peer mediators, they reached the point after being able to use school tools, they reached the point where they understood that they no longer could be friends. However, they established a contract, an agreement of how to respect each other, and understanding that each person had different views. So because of the curriculum, because of the facilitation that the peer mediators helped the students navigate through, they were able to continue to be amicable throughout their entire stay at that school.
Good. Thank you, Arturo. So today, we're going to cover educating school-based staff on navigating school tools as a facilitator's guide for conflict resolution education. Educators using school tools for conflict resolution lessons for students, and we'll also be able to hopefully heighten understanding of conflict resolution via online usage.
So go ahead and participate in a quick little icebreaker. So the one thing that we want to be able to provide you with is a tool to be able to start framing the conversation when entering conflict resolution education. The one thing is that typically when we hear the word conflict, we enter that conversation a little bit tense, maybe apprehensive. You might start relying on your personal biases or your experiences that may create a rift in being able to resolve that conflict. So the way we can start priming that conversation in a positive perspective is through gratitude. So I'd like to invite everyone through the chat box to please let us know, what are you grateful for today? And we can definitely use this with the students as we start facilitating some of the lessons to be able to start framing the conversation in a positive light. So I'll go ahead and share what I'm grateful for today as you start engaging in the chat box. I'm grateful that we have sunshine after the past week and a half of having some gloomy days. So I'm definitely very happy for having some sunshine. Sean?
I'm grateful for the opportunity to share my experience with you and my passion about conflict resolution education, in the hope that you gain an understanding and new information about conflict resolution education through our school tools website.
So we've got a couple, thank you, Sean. We've got a couple coming in. Overarching is health. It seems like everyone's kind of putting in health, and I definitely agree with that, and I can definitely empathize with that. That the rain has stopped. Someone has a new puppy. That's awesome. Grateful for the opportunity to continue to learn, even at this time. Being able to work from home and continue getting paid, for family, for socially distant runs outside. I appreciate that. I have started running with a mask, and it's not the easiest thing. I have to admit. And for technology, great.
Yeah.
Even though we've been experiencing some technological issues, I'm sure as many educators are. Cool. Thank you for participating, and I'm sure we can see how being able to start framing and the thought process and the intentions and the emotions when entering a lesson regarding conflict resolution will help students look at conflict from a positive perspective and help them navigate through conflict to look at win-win scenarios and scenarios that are from a perspective of really respecting each other's views.
Good. Thank you, everyone, for participating.
So now we'll open it up for some Q&A. Any questions that you may have now, thus far, right before we go into the facilitation of our online curriculum. So feel free to open the chat box and ask away your questions. Please note, we'll also, in case we start moving along in the facilitation, if you have a question that we haven't answered, we will come back to a later time to answer that at the end of the presentation.
Anyone have any questions right now?
Give everyone about 43 seconds.
Okay.
I'm definitely excited to be able to go over this curriculum with you guys. I will have to say that if it wasn't for the curriculum, I think training my peer mediators would have definitely been a lot harder. So it came at a really good time too.
I know for me, it gave me the opportunity to do something different with them, to provide additional lessons in conflict resolution, along with peer mediation training, and then additional lessons that kind of helped add into what they were already doing. So, okay, it looks like no one has any questions right now. Maybe you guys will have questions at the end. You can write your questions in the chat box and then we'll come back to them. So we're gonna move forward with our virtual tour of school tools. In a moment, Arturo is gonna transition us from this PowerPoint to our website and guide you through the different tabs and lessons. Our first lesson is analyzing conflict, and we're going to cover defining conflict, sources of conflict, and conflict scenarios.
All right, and I'm going to go ahead and navigate us to that page. Please work, technology.
Here we go. So welcome everyone to the School Tools homepage. At the top of the page, you will see there is a menu. We have the home page. We have our conflict resolution lessons, our online course, our resource library, and a little bit about us. So, but first, just to give you a little snapshot, the conflict resolution lessons. There are 9 lessons that help support conflict resolution, facilitation, and instruction. You heard me mention before that we suggest following the progression of lessons in the curriculum if you're seeking to implement the entire lesson plan. However, you can use the subject as an individual focus, and it doesn't necessarily have to go in the progression, although for best implementation of the entire program, we suggest that you follow the progression. Our next tab is the online course, which provides users an opportunity to practice their content retention through various activities and videos. Our resource library provides additional support through videos and articles about conflict resolution education. And our last tab is a snapshot of the Western Justice Center as an organization and some information about school tools. So our first lesson in our school tools walkthrough is analyzing conflict. And here we begin to explore the basics of conflict by defining what conflict is. This section, we begin to explore has a step-by-step guide to understanding conflict, as you can see here. The lessons are meant to be facilitated by a teacher or parent. The steps are guiding you along the process. Each lesson has a suggested time frame for facilitation. And as you can see, there are videos, and this particular video portrays 2 students engaging in the conversation about what conflict is. And throughout the lesson plans, you'll see that there are videos to help support a visual understanding, in this particular lesson, what conflict is and what conflict isn't. Okay. Just to review really quickly what we just kind of went over, this is our first lesson. This is defining conflict. This provides a step-by-step guide to understanding what conflict is. This lesson is meant to be facilitated by you as the teacher or parent, and the steps guiding you along this process. There is a suggested time frame for facilitating. And the videos are here to help engage in the conversation about what conflict is. And as you'll see along, the students or your children, if you're a parent, can use the videos to help give them a visual understanding of what conflict is and what it isn't. Okay. So the next step, after we have defined conflict, we are now in the sources of conflict. And in this particular lesson, it breaks down the various factors that can lead to conflict. Okay, I mentioned before that there's a time frame. This one is about 35 minutes. And then also you'll notice in this particular section that there are handouts that go along with to help support your instruction. And if you click the button, you'll begin to download a PDF that gives you a definition of what the sources of conflict are. So here you see the definition of the sources of conflict. We have resources, which is money, time, labor, and material things. Information, which is a perception of information from person to person. Emotional and psychological factors, things that are affecting them in a daily basis from a mental or psychological condition. Values, which is based on culture, religion, and beliefs. Relationships and roles, that has anything to do with friends, family, couples, coworkers, neighbors. And the last one is power and structure, which is about access to power and or resources. Thank you, Arturo. As you can see also, there are individual videos giving a visual understanding of what each source of conflict is. And engaging in both the handout and the videos helps them obtain, and them meaning students, obtain a deeper understanding of the sources of conflict. Okay. So to kind of go back over what we just did a little walkthrough, this section is sources of conflict, where after we have defined conflict, we come to the understanding of what the sources of conflict are, or what may cause conflict. This lesson is broken down about 35 minutes. And along with handouts and videos to provide a visual understanding, a deeper understanding of the sources of conflict. Okay.
Cool. And now we arrive at conflict scenarios. So this lesson in particular, I apologize. The next set of videos is meant for students to identify conflict as early on as possible, so that they are able to engage in understanding why that conflict exists, as well as how to navigate those conversations, so that when they start mediation, then they're able to resolve the conflict peacefully. You'll notice that this activity in particular does not have a suggested time frame. That's because this activity in particular is a little bit lengthier. So one way that you're able to use this activity is breaking it up into multiple parts, maybe assigning 2 videos at a time or facilitating 2 videos at a time, maybe 1, really depending on how your instruction looks like based on your distance learning platform. You do have your guide, your navigational guide. As always, we encourage you to go ahead and modify it per your need. And then each video provides a different source of conflict. So each video is very unique and different. It has a different scenario, different interactions, different discussions. From there, we challenge the students to go ahead and identify what that source of conflict is, why it exists, and then how to navigate and resolve that conflict peacefully. The other thing about this activity in particular is you'll see it has an answer key. certain activities throughout our curriculum our online curriculum will have answer keys. Obviously, that's not the end all be all. While it'll give justification that of the student's response, we should be expecting students to, or children to, elicit deeper discussions regarding conflict. So what we'll do now is I will actually transition us over to me facilitating the lesson as an instructor, as an educator, and you as attendees will serve as the students, and we'll go through the activity as a classroom, and we'll debrief thereafter. Okay. So today, class, we're going to go ahead and look at a video regarding a conflict. This video, I want you to go ahead and kind of pay attention to what the students are saying to each other. What are the ideas that are in conflict? And then we're going to go ahead and get into a discussion regarding that. Okay.
Come on, hurry up. Did you get the project? Yeah, sorry, I was at a service. We got the project. We just have to put our names on it. All right, well, let's hurry. Mrs. B picked us to present first, so. You got some dirt on your forehead there. Oh, it's not dirt, it's ashes. Like dead people ashes? No, like Ash Wednesday ashes. They're made from blessed palm leaves. Is that like a religious thing? Yeah, that's why I was at church this morning. Gross. What kind of religion wipes ashes on their foreheads for fun, right?
I can't seem to exit. There we go. All right, students, so what we'll go ahead and now is we'll engage in a poll. I'm going to activate a poll shortly, and you're going to go ahead and identify what the source of conflict is in this scenario, okay? And poll is up and ready for you. So really going back to what resources you guys have, the resources that I gave you guys in our previous lesson that we did last week regarding defining conflict. There was a handout that could help you out in determining what that source of conflict was. So we'll go ahead and close out the poll in about 20-ish seconds. I know we've been experiencing some technical difficulties. Some people have been kicked off of Zoom before. Sometimes polls don't appear for you guys, so that's okay. If you don't see it, go ahead and just let me know via the chat. It looks like everybody went ahead and responded. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and end the poll. And I'm gonna go ahead and share the results. So we see that values is the prime source of conflict. The other thing about it is that as you navigate conflict, as you mediate conflict with other students, you'll also notice that there are secondary sources of conflict. And in this case, information is a secondary source of conflict. However, the prime source of conflict, the main source of conflict is values. So what I want you guys to be able to do now is in the chat box, let me know why you think that source of conflict is your reasoning behind that. Why is it that the source of conflict is values? And for the educators that'll be implementing this with their students, if they're going to do it via distance learning, then, particularly with Zoom, you can see in the chat box, you can see names. So that way it could help you with participation and engagement, things of that nature. So we give everybody a couple of minutes to input their answers. Cool. So we have our first one. The value of spirituality and religion is not the same for each person's involved. Right, right. A misunderstanding about someone's religion. Great. As we remember in the handout, values incorporates religion and beliefs. One student doesn't understand the value of one's religion. And that's a key important aspect, right? Not necessarily having to agree to it, but understanding and respecting. So no context why ashes would be used. Don't yuck my yum. I like that, right? Person's own personal belief. The other person is uninformed and does not have knowledge of Catholic religion. So everyone's beliefs are unique and different. So as we navigate conflict and we help other students come to a peaceful resolution, it's important, it's important to be able to respect each other's beliefs, not necessarily having to inherit or agree to them, but being able to respect that other person because that other person has their own identity. Not enough information about the other person's value. Cool. Thank you all for participating. So that was our first video of the day. We'll go ahead and transition into our next activity in a couple minutes. I'll give everyone, and this is the part where as an educator, you might want to give the class maybe 5 minutes of a break time or whatever have you as far as a mental decompression. So that's what a facilitation would look like as far as this lesson and how you're able to start guiding the discussion. You're able to probe different questions per your own needs, or you're able to focus in on one particular video and really make a big lesson out of it. Really depends on what your class's needs are. So I'll go ahead and briefly review the lesson, and we'll wrap it up from there. We arrived at conflict scenarios, and you'll very immediately see that there is not a suggested time frame. This is a lengthier conversation to have, so you may not be able to go through all the videos in one sitting, or with your class, should I say. You do have your guiding your facilitator's guide here. And these videos provide students the ability to be able to identify what the source of conflict is and help them navigate those discussions. So we ask you to help them navigate them, probe them different questions. You'll see that the answer key is below in specific activities, in particular this one. Again, this is not the end all be all. Yes, it justifies the answer. However, we want them to engage in a deeper dialogue, just as how we did. And we identified that values was the source of conflict here, and we engaged in that discussion. So that pretty much wraps up our online navigation of school tools. We hope that this gave you some insight on how to use the curriculum and how to implement it in the future. We'll go ahead and open it up for some Q&A, and we'll actually stay on this website in case we need to navigate the website for your questions. So we already have a question. Will this be appropriate for middle school? If it is, I can sign up for another beginner session. Okay, so yes, the curriculum is appropriate for middle school. It's really for 4th through 12th. You can use it from kinder through 3rd. However, the videos, you may have to go to different sources such as YouTube to find those videos for age appropriateness. And if it is, can I sign up for another beginner session? So at the end of our presentation, we'll talk about what those later webinars will look like. Go ahead, Sharon.
What are some common missteps teachers might make when using this online curriculum? What can we plan to try and avoid? To be honest, I think you guys as educators know your students best. I don't know if there's anything like significant missteps. This is just a guided lesson plan for you to use as you see fit. So I think just kind of maybe taking the time, maybe just to able to provide the opportunity for your students to give some feedback. I think that's really important. So their feedback, maybe that may be the only thing. Sometimes we forget that as they are participants in this as well. So being able for us to get some feedback, like facilitated discussion from them, so that they have an idea that they are actually getting something out of it as well.
If I can piggyback, because we're doing distance learning, and if you decide to implement it now with distance learning, I apologize, that if you, based on the web platform that you're using, I definitely suggest to do trial and error with the certain unique tools that you'll be using for your platform. So I'll give a personal experience with, we did our first webinar on this same exact navigation last week. Our poll wasn't working for some reason. So being able to have backup plans to engage in, to having backup plans to whatever tool you're going to use online. So that way you don't kind of lose momentum.
Good. Thank you, Arturo. Are there any other questions? Maybe
I definitely appreciate you guys taking the time to be here today and for us to be able to show you our online curriculum. I can definitely say from firsthand experience, it helped me out to be able to really transform the culture and climate at the school that I was working at doing the peer mediation program.
Cool. Excellent.
Okay, well, very briefly, we're gonna go ahead again and open the poll. Let's hope that it works. For some reason, when we switch.
Hold on, Arturo. We have one more. So much of the conflict is unspoken, and how can we be aware of it when we aren't sharing space with students? So that very true. So, I mean, depending on, I guess a way is, depending on the platform that everybody is using. I know everybody may be in contact with each other via their email. I think opening up to be able to have a conversation about what is happening with them or what they're thinking or what they're feeling on a day-to-day basis. You can do it via email as well. I know we're not sharing space, but there's a still opportunity for us to be able to connect through whatever online platform that we're using. So I think using that, but being able to open up the space to have a dialogue about what they're going through, what they're experiencing. Actually today I saw through another organization, videos where there were the parent and the student were interviewing each other. So getting some input or insight like that through opening up a space in order for them to have a conversation.
So, and then in regards to that question, what I can say about what the curriculum looks like is that you're able to kind of facilitate some of the activity as a group. And then certain other things you can assign as an assignment, as a personal assignment, and then have the students submit that, right? So now you really want to be able to probe questions that provides insight on what that kind of like unspoken conflict, biases, prejudices, things of that nature, right? Having students really dive into it from a personal inventory perspective. And then you can start kind of working through those interpersonal conflicts, right? Or internal conflicts. So I hope that kind of helps give a little bit in regards to how to facilitate those conversations.
Okay, it looks like we had one more we missed. So Helen asked, since I missed most of this session, which is no problem, We actually have recordings through our resource library if you want to access this facilitation again. And then we'll talk about actually the next one, because we're going to have another one on Thursday so you can join us.
Cool. All right. So we're going to go ahead and launch our satisfaction poll. Yes, for beginners, Helen. So it's going to be a repeat, and we'll go over that information in a bit. So I hope everyone can see the poll. Again, last week we were having some technical issues, and as I'm sure many teachers are experiencing. And this is completely anonymous. This is for us to be able to know how to adjust, things that we may have missed, things of that nature. I'm going to give everyone about 20 seconds.
Okay.
And then we will go ahead and wrap up.
Okay, so thank you everyone for attending today's webinar on our online curriculum. If you found this to be very helpful, please share with your networks, your colleagues, your friends, and your family. If they're interested on guidance on conflict resolution basics and how to use school tools. This Thursday webinar will be a repeat of School Tools 101 for those that were unable to attend today. Thursday's webinar will be the last for this particular series, but please stay connected with us for our upcoming series in the next coming weeks, later in the month. Like I mentioned before, recordings from our webinar series can be found on our resource page in School Tools.
So we have a couple of things in the chat. The evaluation or satisfaction survey is not working. I keep pressing submit and nothing. That was kind of what I talked about as far as some of the technical issues you might encounter as you facilitate. So being able to have those backups. So we have a backup for that right now. And will this recording be available? Should those who missed it just join Thursday? So we definitely want to encourage those participants to join us on Thursday. If you missed today, if you had to step away for some time and missed our facilitation, please feel free to register for Thursday and join us. As Sean had mentioned, it's the last one in this series. We will make the recordings available after Thursday, and they'll be in our resource library.
Cool.
Okay, so in order for those that couldn't submit the survey, and I'll go ahead and end the poll now.
These are our email addresses, so please stay connected with us. Feel free to email myself or Arturo if you have any questions, if you have any feedback in regards to today's webinar. We will also be sending out a follow-up email with all this information, including ways to stay connected and share this opportunity to your networks. And to also, just to let you know that our organization, the Western Justice Center, is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. Funds raised support programs like School Tools. So please consider making a gift today. And if you go to our website, you'll be able to donate today. We want to thank you and thank you and thank you for joining us today for our webinar series. We hope that it was helpful. And we hope to hear from you very soon. Check back with us, and so we'll have our new webinar series happening at the end of the month. So once again, thank you very much for attending today, and hopefully you guys have a good rest of your day.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Hey, I see Arthur.
Bye.
I'm gonna go ahead and screenshot the poll,
Oh, okay.
but I want to be mindful of people's names. There we go. All right. Come on, let me screenshot. Okay, screw you. All right, let me stop recording.